Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be modding my GTX 560 Baby Hawk right here for HWBot Cheapaz Chips Round 2 of 2023. Now I've already pre-tested the card a little bit in voice chat with some other HWBot guys, and this one's actually pretty decent. This looks like it's not gonna be a repeat of last Cheapaz chips where the core on my card was just really bad and there was no way to work around that. This card seems to be actually pretty decent. So I did the testing on the stock heatsink, and it did 1040 core and 2525 on the memory, both pretty high. And this is also a card that only goes to 1.087 volts on the core, whereas some other cards go to all the way to 1.15. And this card is still outclocking some of those other cards with the stock air cooler. So this looks to be a pretty capable card. So I'm happy to see that for now. And today I want to prepare the card for a first benching session, which... yeah, so I've had a bit of an idea for that benching session. Instead of just recording a video and uploading it, I thought I was gonna swing by the voice channels on the HWBot Discord again and live stream while some other people are also benching their cards in the channel with me, which sounds just a bit more interesting. I just gotta make sure that we're all benching at the same time. But yeah, so it is time to be modding this card. Plan is to volt mod the vCore VRM, attach some capacitors, and if I still have time by the end, also volt mod the memory VRM. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to delete the card yet. I will do it after this, but for now I don't want to deal with the delete, because temperature-wise, like, it looks decent. And the memory clocks are already pretty high. A lot of times you deal it not for better core temperatures, but actually because the better thermal contact makes your memory controller in the core more capable. And this one already looks pretty good, considering it has Samsung E-Die on it, which is not really known for clocking very high. This chip usually, it's a pretty good chip, but you need to mod it. Out of the box, it tends to not clock that high, but when you volt mod it, it tends to get really good. This stuff is already just really good without any mods, so yeah, like, the memory controller on this seems to be pretty happy, because Fermi is usually memory controller limited, not actually memory chip limited, so basically pushing more voltage into these seems to make them lighter on the memory controller, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, yeah, let's go over to the backside of the card, and here is our vCore PWM controller. This is a UPI UP6213A. The funny thing about this is that this is actually a 3 or 4 phase controller, despite us having 6 phases of vCore. Now how does that work? Well, these 3 driver looking things are actually not drivers, they are doublers. So this is running in 3-phase mode, and these doublers are doing exactly that. They're doubling the 3 phases into 6. Which is how you can get 6 phases out of a small old controller like this, because 6-phase controllers existed at the time, but not in this package as far as I know. The smallest one I'm aware of is the CHL 8266, which should have more pins than this. But anyway, so the feedback pin on this I already checked is, so you see the corner right here with the dot on it, and the feedback pin is the 4th pin from the top on this side. So if you get really close, you should be able to see that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So the trace going sorta in between these two, but it might be going to that 0 ohm resistor right there. I'm gonna verify that with my multimeter. If it does go to that, then that's where we're gonna hook up. Let's just check continuity mode. And now I need to hit that little pin. Okay, so I've been able to visually confirm that it is connected to that, even though the reading looks a bit weird. It's probably just because the end of the probe is a little bit too big to reach that pin properly, or there's just a little bit of corrosion on top of the contact, creating that 1 ohms of resistance. But by just looking at the trace very carefully, this 0 ohm bridge, and also consequentially the other side of it, they are connected to the 4th pin right here, which is feedback according to the data sheet. So we're gonna use this to hook up our V-core, and that will be that. Alright, so that's the V-core mod done. Our black wire is all ground, the white wire is the feedback pin, and the red wire is all V-core. That all just plugs into the EVC right here. And then we should have V-core control. And now where we are at it, I think we can also just do memory, because we got the memory inductor right there, we already have a ground, don't need a second, and the feedback pin. Well, our memory controller, PWM controller, is this thing right here, a UP6181 or 6101, more like. Every single time I see one of these 8-pin ICs, pin 6 is the feedback pin. I'm gonna double check, of course, but probably pin 6, just run a wire around and then grab our V-core VMEM sense from here, just from the inductor or one of the capacitors. So I'm gonna double check what this is. Well, who would have thought pin 6 is feedback? So we got a dot right here, and then pin 6 is this one right here. Yeah, let's do the VMEM sense first though, since that's more convenient, so that would be a red wire again. That's in. So that will be all the volt mods. Now for capacitors for V-core. Alright, so that's the first line of capacitors. And my idea for even more was that... So we can still access the ground pins right here. And inductors right here are also V-core. So we could add even more capacitors to that without just doubling up the capacitors right here, because that's a clearance nightmare getting in between there. Alright, yeah, it's a bit crooked and yeah, it looks kind of bad, but that's 12 extra capacitors, so we now have 3 times as much build capacitance as we started with, which is a decent increase. I don't think I'm actually gonna add anything to the memory, because the memory already clocks really well on this. I don't really think the memory is going to be an issue, but I want to get that core clock up. There was one card that outclocked me by 10 megahertz. I don't know what voltage that card was on. It could have been one of the 1.15 volt cards, in which case my card would actually be better. But I don't want to take any chances. I want to have a card for once that has a really good core, because I already know the memory on this is good. Which is nice, and it's a chip that I know scales with voltage generally. So, yeah, no mods behind the core for now, because that's just always a pain. I might, well, if we have to mod the memory capacity at some point, I might add some to the SMDs there, but for now that's not planned. I do want to keep this area free. It's just a pain, and these spots right here were already populated from the factory, otherwise I would have put something there. And really the only thing that I might do is add more input filtering capacitance, like double up these 16 volt capacitors right here. But I don't have any good 16 volt caps right now, and I am not sure if this card even needs it. So for now, just gonna be extra core capacitance on this, and then of course the volt mod, and pretty much all that remains now is just to take our connectors here and screw them on, and then the card is ready for an overclocking session. And yeah, card is ready now. Not my best work. I did cap mods much better than this, but it'll work. Everything is attached nicely. And you know, from the front you don't even see what a mess I've made. So yeah, that's the first modding session of the card done. All that remains is turning on and see if I did it correctly, or if it's gonna catch fire now. So see you in a minute. Before we get to the next part of the video, let's see a message from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by PCBWay. PCBWay is a great supplier for getting PCB prototypes made and quickly shipped to your door. The ordering process is simple. Just select and fill in your PCB's parameters, click calculate and then save to cart, Then fill in your recipient information and finish off by choosing your payment method and shipping option. PCBWay also offers PCB assembly services as well as more advanced options like flexible and more complex PCB manufacturing should your project have a more ambitious scope. If you have manufacturing needs that don't involve circuit boards, you will also find options here, as PCBWay also offers CNC and 3D printing services as well as the option to build an assembly stencil for your project. So everything runs, nothing has caught fire. I have made one mistake though, and that is I did a bit of a brain fart and accidentally connected the VCore monitoring to the ground side of that capacitor, not the VCore side, which is why I have my multimeter hooked up right now to just the VRM output to check our VCore voltage. Other than that, everything works. So if we go in here, start render test real quick. We'll have 1.15 at the output. That is lower, like the actual vid it's getting is just 1.087. So that's VCore. And then if we go over here to our EBC interface, you can see the VCore reading is borked. It's just reading the voltage difference between the ground reference and the ground side of that VCore capacitor. But memory works just fine. And if we increase it by a bit, you can see it goes up. Roughly 10 millivolts per step, and basically the same is also true for VCore. So if we apply 10, we go from 1.15 to 1.16 roughly. So that is all nice. So the one thing I need to do for the bench session is to go back to the back of the card, and this red wire right here needs to go to the other side of that capacitor, because yeah, I accidentally put it on the ground side. But apart from that, everything still works. The card is alive and ready for benching. And I'm planning to do that tomorrow. I'm gonna ask the HW board guys if they have time for that, because it would be cool to have more people than just myself talking, which helps pass the time a lot more. So, I thought I'd add this to the end of the video because, well, I could have made this its own video, but I kind of don't think it's worth it, so I'm just going to add this to the end of this video. And that is a little bit of a report on how the card actually ran. I've ran the card twice now, once on water cooling, once sub-zero with my phase unit, and it has done pretty well. So mod-wise, it hasn't really changed. I have swapped around that VCore lead cable so that I'm now actually measuring VCore and not ground behind the core. And other than that, there has been one little mod, which is this green wire, which just bridges together the extreme cool pads, which is where the full 460 Hawk, which this card is based on, would have had a switch that supposedly makes the card behave better on sub-zero temperatures. I don't know if I actually needed this, but a few people have reported that their MSI Twin Frozer 2 cards have had cold bugs and cold boot bugs, and mine hasn't. That might be because this is bridged. It might also be because my phase unit just doesn't go cold enough, because my peak temperature was sort of -50, and the weirdness might start only at around -60. So my card might have just been just about a bit warm enough to not have issues, or it might have been because of this. I don't really know. I just put this on before I ran at sub-zero, so I don't know. Other than that, we have a bunch of kneaded eraser on both sides of the card. This is just for insulation, so all these sensitive, small, delicate capacitors have been covered in it, so that I don't get any moisture on them or below the BGA or in the BGA of the memory chips or the core. And yeah, the card ran for about 2 hours sub-zero before I pretty much maxed it out, and it has been fine. There were no issues, so I guess my installation job worked quite well. And yeah, so results wise, the card rolled over, sadly. So this is a card that rolls over quite aggressively on ambient, but did about average sub-zero. So on ambient, the card rolled over at 1.23 volts, which is quite low. I really expected to go all the way to 1.4 volts on water cooling, but after 1.23 volts, this card just either didn't gain any more clock and just ran hotter, or actually lost some clock because it ran hotter and was less stable because of that. Sub-Zero, it did keep scaling all the way to around 1.39, 1.4 volts, after which I didn't gain any more clock. And then when I tested a bit further, I also lost some clock again. But that seems to be a trend because while I was benching, I live streamed this. So if you caught the live stream, you already saw this card running. And there were also other people in there, like ASIC was there and Kifi was there, who were both LN2 benching. Like we just, it's a sort of new thing that we've been doing on HW board. It's just whenever we're benching, we just kind of sit in voice chat and either stream to just everyone who joins into the voice chat, or just live stream as well on YouTube, like I have and ASIC has for his second session. So yeah, so I saw them to bench, and they also pretty much stopped scaling at 1.4 volts at LN2 temps, and so it was for me on phase temps. So when it comes to vCore voltage, basically they seem to stop scaling at around 1.4 volts, at least the three cards between us, which mine was an MSI, ASIC's was a direct CU, and Kefi's was a direct CU2, and they all pretty much stopped scaling at 1.4 volts vCore. So there's that. Clockwise, my ambient result, this did, I actually don't remember what it did, 11, did it do 1100? Yeah, it did 1100 core for Firestrike and then 1090 for Cloudgate. I ended up not running GPU Pi because Benchmade doesn't want to work on my Windows 7. I'm probably just going to get a Windows 10 and then run GPU Pi on that, because it shouldn't really care about the OS, while the other two benchmarks do. But those work fine. The only problem I have is my system info was really outdated, and my scores might get deleted because of that. But not really that's a problem. I plan to rerun this card anyway at some point. Yeah. Well. Yeah, so for Sub-Zero, the card did pretty well. Like, considering that I was on phase change temps, so around -40 to -50, and the other two people were at liquid nitrogen. Like Kefi he just went for it. He just full potted his card. ASIC was a little bit more careful, but he was still quite a lot colder than my phase temp. So considering that my card, while it was Sub-Zero, ran pretty warm, it did pretty well. So for Firestrike, the core ran 1310. And for Cloudgate, I had to reduce it a little bit to 1300, which was a pretty decent clock. That's the highest clock I've ever gotten on a GF 114. Like, I ran a 560 Ti cold before, which was somewhere in the 1200s maxed out. So I'm pretty satisfied with how this card went. And then for the memory clock, this one also did really well. Actually, before it had any mods, this did really good memory clocks. This ran 2525 on the memory with stock heatsink without any mods, which I was surprised by, because this card has Samsung 1 gigabit eDI memory, which from GTX 580s I don't really have ever known to clock high without a volt mod. These chips, they were pretty good. They are, in my opinion, the best chip you can have, but you need to volt mod it, at least on GTX 580s, for it to actually clock high. On this card, it just clocked high regardless. Now, I did volt mod it. You can see the control wire right here, and that made them even faster. So Sub-Zero, for both Firestrike and Cloudgate, I ended up running 2600. Or if you go by DRAM speed, also 1300, making for a very satisfying Cloudgate result where both the core and the memory are exactly 1300. So yeah, and the results are pretty good. I didn't really have an estimate for what Cloudgate would be, because I assumed my efficiency wouldn't be that great based on my ambient results, but my Sub-Zero results actually turned out to have pretty good efficiency, and I got a 35,700. Now, at the time that was first place, and I was sitting in first place for a little bit until Kefi and ASIC swapped their scores, because later one of them got a 36,000, and then yesterday on his second LN2 session ASIC got a 37,000, I think. So I'm in third place now, which was to be expected. Like phase change and LN2 are very different things. So it was still nice sitting in first place for like 15 minutes though. Then for Firestrike, similar story. I did sit in first place for a little bit because my Firestrike score went surprisingly high. My target was to score 4,500 and I ended up scoring 4,670-ish. So that was pretty good. Again, I got beaten back by Keefi, who got a 4,900 something, and then ASIC, who achieved a 5070. So he broke the 5,000 barrier on LN2, which was pretty cool. He did it on an unmodded card even, because he had one of these MSI cards, but he had a high side fail and ended up e-powering it, and that card just, it either degraded or there was an issue with the e-power. The card just wouldn't run core clocks high. Actually, it was so bad that I was outclocking his LN2 card with my phase card, with this one. So he swapped over to one of the Asus Direct CU cards, which is actually a card that I didn't mention yet. It's a 4-phase card, but it's actually a pretty good 4-phase card because the VRM is basically just half of a Direct CU2 580's VRM. So that's a very strong 4-phase. And that card he had was basically just volt modded. It didn't have any other mods. Well, I think it had insulation, but it had no cap mods like mine does. So pretty good results getting that 5,000 without any cap mods. So yeah. Now I am planning to rebench this card. Probably not today. So it will be one of the coming weekends, maybe in 2 weeks. But yeah, I plan to rerun this. What I want to try is pull off the insulation off the back of the core here and attach a few multi-layer ceramic capacitors there, because the cards roll over. I think doing proper cap mods will actually help, because you can't keep increasing the voltage at a certain point, because it just makes your card run hotter, and because of that most likely just lose clock. So doing cap mods, getting the minimum voltage up while keeping the average the same, should actually help these cards quite a lot, because they do roll over. So right now the cap mod on this card is just these 12 bulk capacitors at the output. So I want to add a few multi-layer ceramics behind the back side of the core to help, and potentially also cap mod the memory. Now I don't think the memory chips themselves need it, but it might help the memory controller if it gets a little bit more smooth voltage to it. Because these cards seem to be mostly memory controller limited, I don't think it's the actual chips that needed any extra voltage or capacitors, but the memory controller might do. So I'm planning to also cap mod the memory rail a bit, just to maybe help the memory controller clock a bit better. And that's basically the plans. Outside of also getting my OS set up to finally run GPU-Pi. I did run GPU-Pi 3.2 to sort of get an estimate of what the card would do. I ended up clocking the core to 1380 in GPU-Pi 3.2, which, if I can get the same clock and similar result in 3.3, would have been just short of first place, because at the time Keefi already had a score up at 1450 core, which my 1380 did that just can't quite compete, even though the score was quite close. Mine was like a 1 minute 10 seconds, he had a 1 minute 8 seconds, so got pretty close. And once I get GPU-Pi working, I plan to also run that. But as far as the card is concerned, I'm gonna do a few more cap mods, and that's probably basically it, because well, I'm also only gonna be running phase. Don't think I'm gonna get any LN2 Duo anytime soon. So yeah, phase it is for the card, and I'm pretty satisfied with what the card does, because so far the only people that managed to beat me were running LN2, and you know, that's fair, it's LN2, it's way colder than my phase change, so I'm not mad about that happening. So yeah, since so far no one else on phase or dry ice has beaten me, and the card, even compared to the LN2 cards, did pretty well, I'm fairly satisfied with this. This card has really good memory, and a core that also doesn't slow it down. Like at LN2 temps, this might be a really amazing core, considering that I'm less than 100 MHz short of the LN2 clocks. Yeah, so just that extra amount of low temperatures might just get the card there if I could. I mean, I'm not doing it, but yeah, that's basically my extra 13 minutes of thoughts after running the card that I added to the video, which is way too long now. So if you're still here, I thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.